So, I will start with the how giants are female tradition. And I want to highlight Caitlin Gerbin. She's a pro scientist and a pro runner. So, we don't know LabVIEW running. She's bioengineering PhD. She's working on heart cells behavior at the Allen Institute. And 3 weeks ago, she finished third woman at the 2022 UTMB race. For those who don't know the UTMB race, it's a small race around Mont Blanc. It's 170 kilometers, about 11,000 meters of elevation. And so she finished third. So she proves that you can be both a great engineer, a great scientist, and a great athlete. And as a lovable trail runner, I will like to meet her to know how she can get find solution for his engineering problem with the help of his experience with running and the other way. So, yeah, it's just incredible. But to reply to the question, running, LabVIEW, I think it's more LabVIEW on my side. So who am I? Olivier Jourdan. I started programming in LabVIEW in the previous century. I'm the founder of Wovalab in 2018, and I'm a proud member of the DQMH consortium. If you want to know more, I have a LinkedIn page, a Twitter account, so yeah. Today's topic for my talk is about creating documents with LabVIEW, and if we can do awesome document with LabVIEW, it's better. So I will try to give you some information on that. So my talk is divided in 3 different parts. The first part is about what I mean by awesome document. The second part is about the tool I'm using to create documents with LabVIEW. And in the last part, I want to open the discussion on what you can do with Asciidoc and with LabVIEW and without LabVIEW. So, what's an awesome document? First, probably we need to define what is a document in our LabVIEW context. So if I have a general definition for that, I think that a document is any file we are creating to display and share data in a human-readable way. In our context, probably you can call them test reports often, but at the end, it's a document. Some key points for a document. First, it needs to present data the best way possible. So you need to have sections to arrange the content. You need to be able to format text. You need to add images, tables, graphs. You also need to have a modern way to navigate in your document. If you have a multiple-page document, a table of content, anchors, internal links that can allow you to point out a really specific location in the document is something great. You want probably to have this document to follow the graphical guidelines of your company, of your customer. So you need to be able to change the font, to change the color of the font, to add headers, footers, company logo. And at the end, probably we want to have this document available in different publishable file formats. if you want to display this document on your computer, HTML is probably the best format. But if you want to send the document by email, or if you want to print this document, PDF format is better. So let's see some example of what kind of documents we are creating with LabVIEW at Wovalab. You probably heard about Asciidoc. This is an open source project we are developing and maintaining that helps you document your LabVIEW project. So here we are going to document a project using OOP, not DQMH. Something different I'm showing usually. And at the end of the parsing of the project, you can generate an HTML document with a table of content, with sections, tables, UML graphs, images, and you can also choose to generate a PDF file. So it's exactly the same document, but in the PDF format. With the same feature, table of content, you can click on one level and you have everything working. Another example, probably I try to have an example more related to data acquisition. So it's difficult to share example from customers. There could be have some issue with NDA. So I made a really simple demo that is retrieving that data from VIPM.io. So for each tool, I'm retrieving every day the number of downloads, the stars, and so I can graph the trends of the downloads and the stars. I can select one provider, Wovalab, for example, and I can generate a report. Here is the report is generating as a PDF. And if we look at the PDF, we can see that this document is customized. There's the Wovalab logo, there's a title page, and the font used is the font we use for our graphical guidelines. On the first page of this document, you can find data from the selected tools on a table, but the same data are available in a bar graph representation. And the following page are displaying information for each tool. So here we have the trends on the last month download on the first graph. On the second graph, you have the evolution of the stars and the rank of the toolkit. And at the bottom, you have a radar chart to see how the different item, rank, download, and stars are working compared to the better one, the better tool in VIPM. So for each tools, I have a different data. So how are we getting? How are we generating those docs? Usually, we are using tools in LabVIEW. The most known and the most used, I did a small poll on LinkedIn last month, and over 70 replies, 50% of the replies was using NI report generation toolkit. Some of you are using similar toolkits that deals with Microsoft Office or OpenOffice through ActiveX or .NET or this kind of stuff. There's also a PDF toolkit for LabVIEW made by Caria. So you can create your PDF directly within LabVIEW. And some of you use third-party products like Diadem or Watts to generate their report. Obviously, at Wovalab, we are not using those tools, but we are using Asciidoc and Asciidoctor. So let's dive into these two powerful tools. Asciidoc first. If we look at the documentation of Asciidoc, Asciidoc is a lightweight markup language designed for writing technical documentation. So what is a lightweight markup language? It's a way to define a syntax. This syntax is easier to write than markup language like HTML or XML. If you look at the raw file, it's readable. You can see the content. You can read it. It's not publishable, but you can read the content easily. And I'm pretty sure you know at least one lightweight markup language. This is Markdown. If you are using GitHub or GitLab, when you create a project, if you ask GitLab to create the README file, it's going to be a readme.md. MD stands for Markdown. And if you write comments in GitLab and other web application, it's often Markdown lightweight markup language that is used to format your reply. But there are many different lightweight markup language. So why choosing Asciidoc over all these different lightweight markup language? First, the syntax is intuitive, or at least intuitive enough for a LabVIEW programmer like me to be learned and used. So it's fine. It's my way to define it intuitive. The second thing really important is that there is only one syntax specification. So if you look at the lightweight markup language Wikipedia page, this page lists about 10 different markup language, lightweight markup language. There are 4 different Markdown flavors. So when you learn Markdown in GitHub, it's probably different on some point from the Markdown used on GitLab. With Asciidoc, you learn Asciidoc once and over. So it's really important thing, really something important to choose Asciidoc over the other lightweight markup language. Asciidoc has also lots of advanced features the other lightweight markup language don't have. And the documentation is just amazing. So you can understand and you can use the syntax really, you find the information. And there is an incredible community. We are used to know that LabVIEW is an incredible community. 2 years ago, when I started using Asciidoc, I found also a really great community. Last reason to choose Asciidoc, there is a LabVIEW toolkit to write Asciidoc syntax. And so you don't need to learn the syntax to create Asciidoc files with LabVIEW. This is an open source toolkit. There is a README, there is a license. There is a GitLab project. I think I'm okay for the, and you can contribute. It's available for LabVIEW 2014, so I try to keep it usable for the old LabVIEW version. You can install it through the IPM, and it's developed and maintained by Wovalab. So now we have a file, a text file with a syntax, but what are we doing with a plain text file? It's not publishable. That's why we are using asciidoctor. And asciidoctor is a processor of the Asciidoc files. So you give an ad hoc file to asciidoctor, and at the end, you can get the PDF, the HTML, the docbook, any different publishable file format. Asciidoctor is an open source project developed in Ruby. So you need to install it to process your Asciidoc file. So the process you can have, the usual process is having your Asciidoc file, calling the Asciidoctor through the CLI interface, and you will get an HTML or a PDF, like I showed you earlier. You can also have other processors. As we said, in GitLab or GitHub, the README created is made with Markdown. If you change the extension from MD to Asciidoc, it's going to be previewed as an HTML way, so you can totally use Asciidoc in your README file and in all the file you are, the text file you are putting in your repository. You can also use your web browser with an extension to see the HTML preview of your Asciidoc file, and you can edit an Asciidoc file through Visual Studio Code, for example. There is also an extension to install, and you will have a real-time preview of your Asciidoc file side by side, if you want, to see the result. A last reason to choose Asciidoc and Asciidoctor. In this tweet I made in 2020, when I started playing with Asciidoc, I had this reply from Dan Allen. Dan is the lead developer of Asciidoctor, and he is also involved in the specification of Asciidoc. And he just said that, if you read his reply, he started programming with LabVIEW. And he discovered his passion for programming using LabVIEW. So we can't use Markdown. You need to use Asciidoc, I think. That's the real reason. So to recap, Asciidoc is the language, and Asciidoctor is the processor. So with one document source, you can get multiple publishable formats. Now I want to quickly dive into the syntax just to show you how it looks. So on the left of the screen, you will have the syntax, and on the right, the rendering of the HTML preview you can get in the web browser, for example. So my purpose is not to learn you how to write Asciidoc files, but just to let you know some of the features you can get when you use this syntax. So here we can define sections. You just use equal signs, and you can get different level on your sections. You can format and add bold or italic formatting. You can get lists, unordered lists, with some indentation. You have ordered lists, and it's still really simple on the syntax. You have checklists. You can have links, obviously. So it could be really simple. You just write the URL, and you get the link, the clickable link at the end. But you can have more advanced links, like the mail to, with some email address, some content pre-filled in the topic and the body of your mail. And if you click on the subscribe link, you will have your emailer starting a new message. It's possible to insert images. I like this one. If you want to draw attention on a specific statement in your document, you can use admonitions. So you define a type, a note, important, a tip, and you will have at the end this icon before before the sentence. So if you have a 50-page document, it's easy to have the same way to display some statement you want to draw attention to. You can create tables. Here it's a really simple table. You can get really advanced tables. You can display keyboards. So if you want to display that kind of images to explain a shortcut, in your file, it's just going to be KBD and the name of your key. So it's just text, no images. The processor is going to add the images. You can get equations and formula. So it supports LaTeX and ASCII math syntax. So in our engineering world, it could be interesting to display this kind of formulas. And that's the basic feature. We have more advanced feature in the syntax, in the Asciidoc syntax. You can have attributes. Attributes are name-value pairs you can use to configure your asciidoctor processor or to define reusable content. And the interesting thing is that attributes can be set or unset in your command line interface. So when you are processing your ADOC file, you can modify the content using the attributes. So it could be useful if you want to generate your document with an automatic task, for example. If we look at user-defined attributes, we can see that we can declare a URL attributes or content attributes. Here I want to use LabVIEW multiple times in my document. In the Asciidoc file, I'm going to call the attribute in the content using the curve bracket. And if I look at the final rendering, I will have the LabVIEW with the trademark glyph in my document. So no need to write everything. And if I want to change the URL, I just need to change it where I define the attribute. You have built-in attributes. And those built-in attributes can help you get information about your document or set up your processor. So under readable attributes, you can have the backend, for example. So you know if you are processing the Asciidoc file using the HTML backend or the PDF backend, for example. You have the last modified date and time of the document. And you have writable attributes. So there are many of them. I'm just showing you 2 or 3 of them. But here we have the images there. So you can define the location of the images you want to add in your document. And you have the TOC, so the table of content. You can turn on or turn off the display of the table of content, setting on unsetting these attributes and the levels of your table of contents you want to display. There are also include directive. So you can include other text file in your Asciidoc file. So you can organize large documents in different text file. So like we do in LabVIEW when we are creating modules, you can do the same for your document. You can populate table with CSV file. So you don't need to, you can change it programmatically. And you can reuse component. Imagine you have a term definition list or disclaimer you want to add to each of the documents you are creating. You just write your disclaimer once, and you include it to all your documents. Last advanced feature, you have conditional directives. So you can add content to your document based off an attribute. If your attribute is set, you can add the content you want. All these advanced feature attributes include directive, conditional directive can be mixed. So I let you imagine how it could be powerful. And the other thing is you can process your Asciidoc file using Asciidoctor CLI. So you can render your document through automated tasks. So CI is not far from there. But we are at GDevCon, so it's graphical development conference, I think. And I just show you a bunch of slides with just text. So how we are going to do that in LabVIEW. So I told you there is a toolkit. You can add a star if you like the toolkit. It's open source. Yeah, there is a README. Yeah, it was a great presentation. I like it, John. Thank you. We can look at the documentation. There's a documentation on this toolkit. Documentation is shameless plug. It's done with Asciidoc. It's an open source project. And Asciidoc is using Asciidoc toolkit to create documents. So I'm documenting Asciidoc toolkit with Asciidoc. So, yeah, you probably understand that there's something here. It's a basic toolkit. There is palette with subpalette and functions, etc. So you can use it really quickly. But if we look at a really simple example, we can create paragraph, admonition blocks, table blocks, anything I showed you before. And you organize all these blocks in sections, and you add the content into your documents. And at the end, you set up your document. You can give a title to your document. You can display or not the table of content, etc. And if you run this example, you will get this text file written in Asciidoc syntax, but you don't have to learn the syntax. But we still want to get that kind of view. We don't want to read a text file. So we can open the Asciidoc file generated in a web browser with the extension. That's possible. But you need to install the extension. You need to, yeah, it's not plug and play. Since the version 1.5 of the Asciidoc toolkit for LabVIEW, the Asciidoctor toolchain is installed. So when you install the tool with VIPM, it's installing all the toolchain. And the thing is, probably you are not going to execute your LabVIEW executable on the same computer where you are developing. So you want to generate a document on your customer computer. So we need to install it. So in the toolkit, you have two new functions. One that checks if the Asciidoctor toolchain is installed, and if it's not installed, you have a second function that installs the Asciidoctor toolchain. And then you just need to use the render Asciidoc file to generate the PDF or the HTML file. But what about the graphs and diagrams? I showed you in the examples some diagrams, some graphs. We are just going to describe them as string. And because it's string, it's really easy to create with LabVIEW. And there are lots of projects that exist to create images from text. Most of them are supported by the Asciidoctor-diagram extension or the Croquis server. Croquis is a server you can send a text representing a diagram and get the images. So if you want to draw that kind of diagram, this is the representation of relationship between the QMH modules. You can use GraphViz syntax. And there is a LabVIEW project, open source, made by Cyril Gambini from Neosoft that helps you to create this kind of diagram. If you want to draw UML representation, you can use Plan2ML syntax. And there is a project, Classy Diagram Viewer, made by Tatiana Boyer. And it took a project reference or a class reference, and it created Plan2ML syntax. Just a few words about Tatiana. I saw a presentation of her during the last CELA European Summit, and it was about documentation. And she talked about Asciidoc. And this is the beginning of what I am talking today. So thank you, Tatiana. And if you want to draw graph, you can use Vega or VegaLite APIs. With the latest version of Asciidoc toolkit for LabVIEW, I released it 2 days ago. It was released. You can draw line charts, grouped bar chart, and radar chart. So you have 3 new blocks you can use to add graphs into your document. So to recap, to generate HTML or PDF files from a single source, you can create Asciidoc files with diagrams, with graphs, with images, using text directly from LabVIEW, and then you render the final document using Asciidoctor. So, advantages. It's just creating a text file. Asciidoc is fully compatible with Unicode. So if you have things, different characters to display, it's going to work. It's named Asciidoc just because the characters needed to the syntax is only ASCII characters, but it's fully compatible with the Unicode. It's straightforward to debug, because if you don't get the final document as you expect to have, you can take the Asciidoc file, open it with Visual Studio Code, and debug to find what's the issue with the syntax. Everything rely on open source project, from the LabVIEW toolkit to the Asciidoc syntax and asciidoctor processor. It's open source, so it's nice. And no need of Office applications or no PDF printers to have all this stuff, so I think it's beautiful to not have to handle this kind of installations. Last part of my talk, how can we go further with that? First, you can customize your outputs. When you are creating HTML or PDF, you have a default template, but if you are creating HTML file, you can use CSS file to customize your output. And for the PDF, there is a way to theme your output. Next thing to do is to continue to improve the Asciidoc toolkit LabVIEW, toolkit for LabVIEW, by completing the Asciidoc syntax and adding new graph blocks. If you try the latest version, if you have feedback on these 3 new blocks, it's probably a bit experimental so far. This is something I really want to improve in the future. And Vega and VegaLite enables you to draw really impressive data visualization images. So there's many things to do on this way. And probably something outside the LabVIEW ecosystem. If you know about Asciidoc syntax, if you know about asciidoctor, I encourage you to step into docs as code. This is an approach that enables you to use the same workflow to write your documentation than the workflow you use to develop. So you will place your documentation in your repository. You can use issue tracking like we do with your LabVIEW stuff to improve your documentation. And you can use your automated tasks to test, to build, and to deliver your doc. As a really simple example, you probably heard about the Document Consortium, who was recently, 2 days ago, I think, 3 days ago, published his style guideline for LabVIEW development. This document is a 30 pages document, PDF file or HTML version of the document. And obviously, source code of this documentation is formatted with Asciidoc syntax. And we are using continuous integration to build the final document. So when we are working on the document, so we have feature branches in our repository. When we are pushing, we have a continuous integration task triggered, and we are automatically adding the watermark draft in the PDF file. And you can see the version here display is a draft version with the date of the last modification of the document, and you have all the document here, so you can see if there are issues in the document. And when times to generate the final version. The CI is removing the watermark, and you can see that the version of the document is displayed here. It's just the branch name, and you have the date, and you have the SHA-1 of your commit. So it's fully automated process. So I think it's something interesting to improve our overall process of creating LabVIEW code and documentation. One more thing, obviously this presentation is made with Asciidoc syntax, and the HTML version I'm displaying here is treated using asciidoctor -reveal.js converter. And this presentation will be open source, so I will post the link to the GitLab repository. So if you want to see the source code of this presentation. I'm done with this talk. If you want to continue, I'm leaving on Saturday, so if you want to talk about documentation, you can reach out to me until Saturday. I can discuss documentation when I am running. So if you want to run and discuss documentation, it's fine. And after that, there is a Zulip chat where you can discuss all the open source projects we are developing and maintaining at Wovalab. Feel free to use it. There is the issues of the GitLab projects, and obviously the GDevCon Discord channel. Thank you.
Can we limit it to a couple of questions? So we're running a little bit over, so just to we can carry on discussions afterwards.
Okay, I have one question. Have you ever tried to use LaTeX? And how does it compare to this?
I never used LaTeX.
Okay. Because I'm in the situation that I used LaTeX and never used Asciidoc.
Yeah. 2 days ago, I was discussing with one of my customers. He has a PhD, so he writes his thesis with LaTeX. I think I don't have a PhD, so but I heard that many of PhD
I
writes
wrote my
their
master's thesis in LaTeX.
Yeah, and he showed me the LaTeX file, and it's not. I didn't find it really intuitive to write in LaTeX.
Yeah, I know that it's not as intuitive as you showed the examples here.
I think it's good to use the LaTeX for formulas and use Asciidoc for all the content, because you can, you can do you can convert your document in many different formats, and I don't think you can do that with LaTeX. But if someone used
the standard
LaTeX,
format is PDF, I think. So you can't have HTML, for example.
Yeah. So use the LaTeX formula and syntax for the formula, and use Asciidoc. My advice. But
okay, and another question with this tips, important, these little marks.
Admonitions?
Yes. Is there a way to design our own graphics to this?
Yes,
or?
you can define the icons used for each of the type of the admonition blocks.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, maybe I missed something, but did you speak about conversion between more conventional formats like doc?
Yeah.
Very often we get part of documentation from customers, for example, and they never write in anything but Microsoft Word. So what about the conversion of files or transfer through clipboard?
There are no converter for Word. That's the thing. You can write your own converter. It's possible if you want to write it. I never had this. I think that people want doc and Word document because they want to modify it. It's not a 100% the solution here, but I have no great solution for Microsoft Word user. It's not really a tool I would encourage to use. There are no... yeah, I know, we are forced. But I try to convince my customer to move forward. And yeah, I don't have any good reply to your question. If you need to use Word, you need to use Word. But you can't use that.
Asciidoc has the RTF output. And RTF can be open in Word.
I don't know if there is an RTF converter. But yeah, why you using Microsoft Word? I don't get it.
Okay, guys, can we carry on the discussion in the break? Is that all right? Because we're running a little bit over. You've got a question up there. Olivier, if you catch them in the break.
Hi. So I do have a question.
Yeah.
I do have a quick question in regards to the reporting aspect. So Asciidoc to generate reports. The benefit for example, Diadem is you have the what you see is what you get way of working. Is there a similar toolkit available, or is it something in your planning to do something similar for Asciidoc?
No. Yeah, with Asciidoc, Asciidoc is generating the document. You are not modifying it. So at the end of the parsing of the project, you get the document. So now, with the latest version, you just hit the button and you have the HTML version of the document. I don't know. What do you want to have?
So what I'm more looking for was, okay, we make a template with what you see is what you get, with some example data, and then afterwards we can constantly make the same report over and over again.
It's not the way Asciidoc is working. This is what you are describing is the way we are, I think, it's the way we are doing with the NI generation toolkit, for example. You create your template with Word and you put some things. I'm not really good at Word. and you fill in this place. And it's not working like that. But if you want to do that with Asciidoc, you can use the include directive. So you can create your own template with the Asciidoc syntax and just create the file you want to include that are going to change between different data you are working.
Okay,
I'm
thank
not
you.
If you want to discuss more, we can.
I just wanted to add kind of like a clarification, because I think you are so used to doing it that I don't know if everybody here sees the huge advantage that Asciidoc brings is that you continue to develop your code as you've always done it, and you document as you go. And if you've done that, and you put like the description of your modules, the description of your classes, description of your project, as you are creating them, when the time comes to create the documentation, you don't have a bunch of developers all grunting at you because they have to write now the documentation. They did it since the beginning. You press a button every time you do continuous integration or every time you build an executable, the documentation is built. So there's no more excuses to not have documentation because you're doing it as you go. So I think that was, I don't know if everybody had that picture in mind or not, but that's where the power of this tool is. We don't have to have a technical writer doing the whole thing at all times. And then the other thing is if you have a graphical designer in your team and you have style guidelines, you can fit them to the documentation generator and you get the right font, you get the right style, etc. So I think if you could ask me more questions about that on the break, I totally suggest that.
Thank you, Fab. Thank you.